I recently had my PC optimized for gaming by Kev from PowerGPU. This was a quick and easy process to sign up for on the PowerGPU website, but the waitlist can get fairly backed up as it did take about 2 months from the time that I signed up until the optimization actually happened, just because of the current trend of getting your PC optimized for gaming and for content creation. So there was a lot of backup on the waitlist there. Today, we're going to go over what the optimization entailed, how the optimization has helped or hurt, and whether or not an optimization is worth it for you as a gamer or as a content creator. Basically, I went through it to see whether or not you have to or not.
The first thing that Kev optimized for me was my Windows operating system. This primarily focused on reducing input lag as much as possible for games, trying to create as little inputs on the CPU as possible and just streamline everything and make it as efficient as possible, so that way in games, when it comes down to the milliseconds, I get the best possible reaction time and input time at all times. So this included adjusting some simple Windows settings, kind of the basics, going through like making sure I'm on high performance mode and taking off the GPU hardware acceleration, because on my system apparently it doesn't have a very good effect as much as it has a negative effect, so it's better to take that off. And I learned a lot along the way as he was going through it and guiding me through it. Another big piece of reducing input delay on a system within gaming that I personally didn't know about and that I learned from Kev is disabling the RGB devices within your machine and on your peripherals such as keyboards and mouses, just because the anti-cheat systems that most games use, they have to register that input every single time twice because it is such a common vector for cheats to be pushed through. Disabling RGB devices will decrease the input latency to your devices and to the game. But if you are pretty attached to your RGB colors, whether it's on your system, on your keyboard, on your mouse, any peripherals that you may have, this is going to be a hindrance, so you might not want to get that on the optimization. He will do it without that, of course. That's just something that you're going to have to decide whether you want performance or whether you want the looks and the quality of the RGB within your setup. The next piece of Windows that Kev optimized was just altering some registry keys that affect gaming performance and system performance as a whole. He did this pretty quickly with some preset scripts that he already had set up and that he commonly uses with all of his clients. So that went by super quickly. It was simple, easy process. After updating the registry keys, Kev went through and optimized my voice meter, making sure that my microphone sounded as good as possible and that it was working correctly with my system. He put me on the WDM driver. For some reason I was using the WME, so that just reduced the microphone latency a little bit. And then he made sure that all my frequencies were matching and everything was set up as it should be. It was pretty good for the most part, but there were a couple things he had to touch up, so I'm grateful for that. And then after that, he went in and set up controller overclocking for my controller. I had used this in the past. I kind of disabled it for my Xbox One controller, and then he re-enabled it, and then I kind of tested it out, and I actually disabled it again, just because with my particular controller, this is something that he did explain, by the way, that you might want to disable it if you're having like input issues, because some USB ports and USB cords along with controllers just don't mix well with the overclocking. And since I'm using the Xbox One core controller and it uses a USB-C cable and a USB-C port, I think that might be causing some issues, and it just had like some weird joystick inputs every once in a while I was trying to aim. And then there was also some times where pressing buttons on my controller wasn't really doing what I was expecting it to, so I went ahead and disabled that right away. But he did use the HID USB-F overclocking for controllers, which is probably the best overclocking that's out there right now. After optimizing my Windows settings for the best gaming performance, Kev went ahead and optimized my OBS settings for performance and quality as well. For my stream, I stream over on twitch.tv/Tuttle. If you want to go drop a follow and check that out for any time that I go live to play Warzone or Valorant or whatever game we might be playing that night, you can head on over there and check it out. But he did adjust some settings that I had set up differently just through YouTube tutorials and such for quality and that kind of thing. And he explained the changes that he made and why it affects input and input delay, input responsiveness within different games, especially since I'm streaming on a single PC setup. It could be a little bit different for a dual PC setup, which they do optimize, but basically I was using 2 different encoders, one for recording and one for streaming. My streaming settings were pretty much close to optimal, except for he did add the stream effects plugin, which he used for his quality preset. He made a quality and a performance preset for me, and the quality preset didn't really work the best for Warzone on my system, and that's just because Warzone uses so much memory and so many resources, and it's really taxing on a single PC setup. So I haven't been using that, but I have been using the performance setup. And basically my recording side of things was using a separate encoder. That way I could have like a little bit higher quality recordings. But he changed that to to use the same encoder as my stream encoder, because having one single encoder rather than 2, it basically had to duplicate those inputs with the encoding that it was getting from the game. So it was taxing my CPU twice, which I didn't quite realize. But it's going to lower the quality of my recordings a little bit, but it's not a big deal because my stream quality is already fairly good. And anyways, when I upload to YouTube, it usually decreases the quality that I have anyways. So I'm not too hurt about that, but we got everything optimized on the OBS side of things as well. And between Windows and OBS settings, we were good to go. Lastly, Kev, of course, optimized my in-game Warzone settings. So Warzone, Cold War, Valorant were the main games I told him that I played. Valorant, he said it doesn't really matter which settings you use, since it's such like a well-optimized game. You can pretty much just pick and choose what you want for visual quality versus performance, and most people just play on the lowest settings anyways, getting the best frames, and then the game looks pretty good. But for Warzone, you do have to change up quite a few of the settings, which I will put up here on the screen right now, the graphics settings that I'm using. And these are pretty close to what I had beforehand. I was messing around with the settings a little bit beforehand, just messing with the different anti-aliasing textures and that kind of thing. But these ones that he recommended really are doing great. I've been playing on the 120 FOV with controller, and honestly I'm able to see super clearly. Still playing on a 1080p monitor, so no 1440p, which I've heard does help with clarity a lot in Warzone, but I definitely don't want to make the upgrade right now just based on the price of a 1440p monitor just for Warzone. Now that we've gone over what the optimization entailed and how it kind of went down, I want to kind of have a discussion with you all about whether or not this is worth it, because I know that there are a lot of people out there who are considering investing in a PC gaming optimization, just because there are a lot of PC settings. There's a lot about PCs. There's a lot of a knowledge gap that comes to PCs. I thought I had a fairly good understanding, and then after going through this optimization, I realized there's a lot that I still have to learn, and a lot that other people know that I don't. Kev was extremely intelligent about this. You could tell right away in the Discord call that he knew his stuff. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew what changes he was making and why. He was really good at explaining the why, which I always appreciate a ton. I just don't like it when people are tweaking stuff and not really explaining why they're doing it, because then it gets a little bit iffy. But overall, I think that if you are in the market for a PC optimization, I would suggest it. My game has felt extremely smooth. My entire system has been running a lot better. And when I'm streaming and gaming, it feels so much smoother. There was a little bit of a jitter and like lag beforehand that I was experiencing on Warzone every once in a while, and I haven't had that at all. And overall, like some of the network optimizations he did as well, it's just been feeling really, really clean and really, really smooth overall on my system. So I think it is a good idea, especially if you don't have an insane PC knowledge. If you have an IT background or a PC hardware background, software background, you might be able to do these kind of things on your own. But if you don't really know or understand what you're doing, and or if you think you do but you might not actually know, it's okay to admit that to yourself and just go ahead and get an optimization. I do think it is a really solid investment, and like I said, I got mine through PowerGPU with Kev. I know there are other options out there as well. I know I see Kerneal and Berkius of Sense of Quality on Twitter, and then I also see some other solo entrepreneurs on Twitter that are optimizing PCs, but I can't really speak for the quality of any of those. But I know there are options out there if you want to go take a look and understand what kind of budget you have and what kind of PC optimization you want to get for yourself. I do appreciate you all tuning into the video. I hope this was informative and helps you make a decision whether or not you want to get your PC optimized. And I hope you all have good games and good streams, good content creation, whatever you do with your PC.